Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Executive of the 5th of March 2024. My name is Councillor Paul Follows, and I'm Leader of the Council and Chair of the Executive, and this meeting is being held in the Council Chamber at the Berries in Godalming and webcast live. Ben, have we got any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Leader. You have apologies from Councillor Palmer this evening.
Thank you. And Executive members, can you agree the minutes of the 6th of February 2024? Thank you. Declarations, I will just cover here that the matter, some of the main business on tonight's agenda are the recommendations of the SIL board. I'll be restructuring part A of those recommendations to list it by area. So it will go Farnham, Cranley, Godalming, Haslemere and others on the advice of the monitoring officer to avoid the perception of bias, and I think it's a very sensible suggestion. Members in those areas will be asked to leave the room during the debate and vote on those sections in their areas. I shall be doing so for all of the Godalming matters. Section B relates to the Farnham Infrastructure Plan and is a recommendation to Council, so it's not a decision of the Executive, and so I will just notify everybody here that we will all be staying in the room for that debate. Otherwise, the actual nature and substance of the debate is too materially skewed to undertake that item of business. Are there any other declarations other than the matters of SIL? No, in which case we move to questions from the public. Ben, have there been any questions from members of the public?
There are none, Leader.
Thank you very much. And questions from members?
There are none, Leader.
Thank you. Okay, in which case we move then to item 6. I have only a few short updates. I suspect in the next few days we'll be wanting to respond to suggestions in the budget, the national budget that is, that the council, or all councils across the United Kingdom apparently have enough waste that we can deal with our own issues. That certainly seems to be the inference from the Chancellor today. There will definitely be some response to that from a number of us in a lot of different hats over the course of the next week. What I do also want to say very in public is a thanks to the monitoring officer and the 151 officer for their work in addressing the matters in Guildford in regards to the Joint Senior Staff Committee. Those were things that were difficult decisions and difficult conversations, and those officers have shown exactly why we put such faith in our professional officers. I'm also minded, following some reflections of that Joint Senior Staff Committee, to request our Joint Chief Executive to invite Solace, who are the outside body who have been looking into those matters in Guildford, to proactively look at the governance structures in Waverley. I'm going to suggest that they do this once they finish the work into Guildford so that any risks or insights can inform the work that they do here. Now, I'm just going to make this clear that I have full and complete confidence in our financial and democratic governance structures here at Waverley, but I feel that external validation and assurance of those systems is a prudent step to take, and I will offer peace of mind to our residents, councillors and staff, as well as opportunities for continual improvement. I hope that's something that everybody here supports. I think it is a prudent step just to get somebody to look at that, and I've had some discussions with our Chief Executive about making that happen. So that will be taking place in due course. So at that point, Pedro, did you want to just add anything on that at all? Otherwise, I'll head round to the rest of the exec. No, all good? Right, in which case I will do the rounds as ever, starting with Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Leader. Very quickly, because we have Brightwell's coming up at the end, I'd just like to take this opportunity, as I often do, actually, to commend and praise the work of the enforcement officers at Waverley, who are working extremely hard across the borough, in particular with issues in Bramley, in Haslemere and in Farnham. They do work very, very hard, long hours, and they're doing a cracking job. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Fairclough. Councillor Keele.
Nothing's particular for me. I would like to echo your thanks to the monitoring officer and to our 151 officer, and also say that I would welcome Solace's involvement here. Thank you.
Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Leader. I'm afraid I do need to correct some of the wilder and more absurd claims that have been made regarding the budget that we agreed last week. Starting with parking charges, they're not going up by 18% or 32%, or as I've seen in one case, 67%. Even though the headline rate was 15%, In all cases, bar a few, they've been actually rounded down. So the average increase is 11.4% compared to 2021, when they were last frozen. In fact, the highest increase is only 13.64%, and that's for the 2-hour rate, and only in our 3 most congested Farnham short stay car parks. Otherwise, the increases are on average around about 10p per hour. And I would like to encourage everybody who's parking, please to consider using the much cheaper and just as convenient long stay car parks. For example, in Farnham, we've got 3, Riverside 1, 2 and 3, which offer exceptional value for money and should be considered. And I'd also just like to dispel any fears. At the moment, we have no plans to introduce charging in our car parks on Sundays. Secondly, 69 High Street. We apparently, according to some of our critics, should have been considering buying the Boots site on High Street, Godalming, rather than investing in 10 much needed council homes, affordable council homes on the 69 High Street site. And I'd like to reassure our residents that we have no plans to invest in commercial property for its own sake. Our motives at 69 High Street have always been and will continue to be primarily to deliver the much needed affordable housing. Finally, particularly with the budget coming up tomorrow, I'd just like to remind our residents that the government does restrict our ability to raise funds, either directly from them or through other means, which means that it's particularly difficult to keep pace with inflation, especially in hyperinflationary times. So while we did welcome the £1 million one-off grant that we received for this year, that still compares to the £28 million that the government sucks out of Waverley in business rates each and every year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Merriweather. Councillor Mirrlees.
Thank you, Leader. I'm going to be speaking on item 9, so I'll do that.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Nothing to add, Leader. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Rivers.
Thank you, Leader. Nothing of note to add at this point.
Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Leader. I'm delighted to confirm that we've launched our new consultation hub using Commonplace, which will make it much easier for residents to share their thoughts and ideas with the council, especially on things like the local plan. It will also be an improved platform for across the council to share other projects and ideas and useful information and to gather that important feedback from our communities. The first consultation is on our updated statement of community involvement, which shapes the way that we consult with residents and or stakeholders regarding the local plan and on other planning matters as well. There will also be paper copies of the statement of community involvement consultation, and these will be available here at the Berries and also from libraries as well. And that's from the 8th of March and it closes on the 19th of April. I'm also delighted to confirm that we have successfully secured £100,000 of government funding to advance our digital planning services. I'd like to thank officers for submitting a successful bid for a share of this new digital planning programme. They produced a very compelling case to secure this funding support. And this will enable us to develop our digital planning practices further, and that will include for the local plan. This will make it much easier to submit and approve planning applications and speed up our decision making, as well as making it much quicker and easier for our residents to engage with the council and have a say, as I said, on the future of the borough through the local plan process. On another matter, once again last weekend, residents in my ward in Cranley witnessed sewage spilling onto the highway into their gardens and were once again unable to flush their toilets. At the same time, across the village, 6 large overflow pipes were spewing raw sewage unchecked into the river network for many, many hours. You would hope that this was an uncommon event, but unfortunately not. It now happens every time there is a spell of heavy rain, and we know from reports across the country that we are unfortunately not unique. At a time when we need strong environmental protection, we are faced with an underfunded Environment Agency and water companies that mark their own homework for reporting on pollution from their own treatment works. I'm sure that I'm not the only one here that hopes to see in the budget tomorrow an increase in funding to the Environment Agency, which has faced a budget cut of almost 2/3 since 2010, against a backdrop of escalating costs and more and worse pollution incidents. We know that these incidents, including the dumping of untreated sewage, are a priority for our residents. And after 14 years of austerity, it is clear that the government needs to provide adequate funding to the Environment Agency in the budget tomorrow to address this. Thank you. Thank you, Leader.
Could not agree more. Certainly something also close to my heart. Councillor Williams to finish.
Thank you, and certainly if we can secure in the budget support for councils that have got that are desperately seeking funding amidst all this waste apparently that councils are involved in reaching a net zero trajectory in terms of our carbon emissions, then that would be much appreciated, and somehow I doubt that that will be coming tomorrow. So just going beyond that a little bit, in the light of not just our statutory duties, but in relation to the absolute imperative of promoting biodiversity within our borough, officers are now in the process of evaluating the tender submissions for conducting habitat condition surveys and biodiversity net gain potential for all council sites across the borough as part of a rolling programme over 4 years. And clearly that's something which we will be looking at very closely going forward in order to implement our biodiversity strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. In which case we'll now move to item 7, recommendations from overview and scrutiny. So the ONS committees will be meeting later in the month. So any of those recommendations that they do pass will come to executive at the beginning of April. Right, so we now move on to item 8, the Community Infrastructure Levy Bidding Cycle 2023-2024. In the absence of Councillor Palmer, I believe Councillor Townsend is going to be taking point on the overview of the report. Liz, did you want to introduce this before I bring in Jerry, and then we'll go to the chicanery of all of us moving at various points we need to do. So, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, I'd like to thank officers for all their hard work on this. It is actually a huge task. They have to go through an awful lot of paperwork, an awful lot of applications and matching against all the criteria as well. And then I'd also like to thank the working group of members as well, because they spent an awful lot of time deliberating, looking at each individual application and considering it as well. So this report seeks to gain approval from the Executive for the allocation of this strategic SIL funding to the projects recommended as outlined on 7.24 of the report, and this is for the bidding cycle for 2023-24, and will be subject to the completion of final checks and the signing of funding agreements as well. We, as the Executive, have an upper limit of £2.5 million per individual award, above which the approval reverts to full council. And as you can see, there is a separate recommendation for the allocation of SIL to the Farnham Infrastructure Project, because that comes to just over 3.2 million. And that application was in the name of Surrey County Council. So this as well, payment to the Farnham Infrastructure Project will be split equally across the financial years 23-24 and 24-25. This is to take into account the project timeline for this project. And also you'll see within the report there is an allocation for the Cranley Leisure Centre, and again that will be split over the 2 years to take into account the project timeline for that as well. We received this time 22 submissions, and the total value of the projects was 64.8 million. And the total SIL requested was 11.8 million. We had 2 invalid bids, which are included within the pack. These values represent figures significantly higher than the previous strategic SIL bidding cycles. So previously, the value of the project submitted in 22-23 was 24 million, with 9 million requested from SIL. As per the previous bidding cycle, the quality and detail provided within the submitted bids did vary greatly. But all of the bids were scored against the agreed SIL scoring criteria, and 6 officers independently scored all the valid bids, following which an average score was then taken for each criterion, and the scoring matrix was presented to the working group, the SIL Executive Working Group, which helped to inform the recommendations which are outlined within the report on, as I said, on point 7.24. As you can see, the funding has been awarded across the borough and for various projects from roads to community buildings. And obviously this shows the need for this SIL infrastructure across the borough. We've already said that obviously we will be discussing these reports, but I will be moving out of the chamber for the discussion on any bids for Cranley. And I would also like to stress that during the SIL working group, I did not vote on the projects that were for my particular area. So I think, the projects are all outlined within the report, and I'd welcome any comments. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Before we move into the specific discussions on each of the areas SIL bids, I've got one speaker, Councillor Hyman, if you're on the Zoom.
Thank you, Leader. I am indeed. This may be great news, or a great start in the absence of Surrey County Council's proposed £250 million investment in sorting out Farnham's traffic problems, which is where the Farnham Infrastructure Project started. But the Farnham Infrastructure Programme's purpose is to reduce congestion. That's what it states. That was the original aim, and remains so, according to Surrey and in Farnham, and to improve the air quality. Air Quality Action Plan, the 2023 adopted last March, states in there that it is subject to modelling. Early in the process, I know that our leader and the MP, to their credit, were very keen to stress the importance of assessing the impact before going to the public with their proposals, and we haven't yet seen the models. We require detailed modelling. We're still awaiting it in Paramix, not the Sintram model, which they used at an earlier stage, which is the Surrey-wide part of the national transport model for main roads, and which in Sintram they're able to assume a certain level of reduction in traffic due to what they call modal shift, behaviour change. We do need to we need to know, and I'd like to know, please, from the executive, from yourselves, whether the executive can confirm that Surrey will be required by the terms of the agreement with them to demonstrate through a public demonstration and scrutiny of the detailed modelling that the proposals will not worsen congestion and air quality around the town, in accordance with the Air Quality Action Plan and Farnham Infrastructure Project stated aim. So will we be ensuring, as it's a requirement in our, it says it in our Air Quality Action Plan, that we will be requiring that the modelling is demonstrated before anything is done on the ground? Thank you very much.
We'll cover as much as that as we can when we get to the part specifically on the Farnham Infrastructure Plan, Surrey County Council bid. That is effectively the second part of this suite of recommendations, Jerry. So it won't be that we're ignoring them in the first bit. It's just we'll deal with it on its own as a second part. Right, in which case I'm now moving to the discussions on the individual applications, starting with the 2 in Farnham. The third, of course, is the large FIP one, subject to the second recommendation. So this is items 7 and 11. So if I can ask the Farnham councillors in the room to depart into the Mayor's parlour while we take this part of the item, and then we'll move forward. Okay, so for the avoidance of doubt of everybody else, this relates to the Ridgeway School, item 7, and Rowledge Village Hall, item 11. Liz, did you want to say anything on these particular ones before I open it up?
No, I just would make it clear that obviously, you know, there is a very a strong governance structure around this. The officers look at it first of all, they then put the recommendations forward. The Ridgeway School, the upgrades to the playground were particularly, you know, enhanced that area, and you know, it was supported by everybody within the working group. The other one was what other one was it? Sorry, apologies. Oh yes, the Rowley Village Hall, again, a much needed community hall for the area, and you know, and it again scored well on the criteria, and it within. Sorry, I didn't realise that was on. Apologies. And you know, again, it is subject to certain funding agreements being carried out, and as you can see within the criteria that they will also be putting some funds towards it themselves for the new village hall, and are also liquidating other assets as well to make this happen. But I think it will be a great community asset for this area. And the existing village hall is no longer fit for purpose, very old and drafty by all accounts.
I've been in it, I can confirm it is very drafty. Right, any further comments before I bring this one to a vote? I think it's both very sensible recommendations. Right, can I have all those in favour of recommendation A regarding the Farnham to items 7 and 11? Can I have all those in favour, please show? Thank you, that's carried. We'll now move to the Cranley items, in which case I'll ask Councillor Townsend to depart and to send our Farnham colleagues back in. In one of those behind the scenes of council's moment, the note in the papers for me tonight is councillor follows to orchestrate when it comes to this section. So we'll see how this goes by the time that we're done. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Item B, which is the Cranley related matters, which relates to, for the avoidance of doubt, number 12, which is the Surrey County Council bid for the Cranley Local Street Improvement Scheme, and item 22, which is a Waverley Borough Council bid for a portion of the Cranley Leisure Centre spend. I will just say a few words on these on behalf of the Cranley side of Waverley. The local street improvement scheme is a fantastic additional boon that we didn't think we'd get from Surrey, so very much support that. It will assist with a number of matters in Cranley, and of course the Leisure Centre is something that we've been through many times, most of us here. The benefits of which have been demonstrated time and time again, and I think we have all supported in various ways over the course of the last few years. Are there any speakers on either of the Cranley matters? Otherwise, I shall bring it to a vote. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, only very briefly to endorse everything that that you said in relation to the Cranley bids, and particularly Cranley Leisure Centre. I mean, every time, you know, I hear that mentioned, I think this is a really exciting, innovative project which will benefit the people of Cranley enormously, and will do a significant amount to reduce our carbon footprint as a borough in line with our carbon neutrality action plan.
Thank you. Any final speakers on the Cranley items? In which case, can I have all those in favour of recommendation B, Silbid references 12 and 22? Thank you very much, everybody. I will now, along with the other Godalming councillors, recuse myself into the Mayor's parlour and hand over to the Vice Chair.
All right, for those of us who are still in the room, item C are applications or recommendations relating to Godalming, which are numbers 4, the Binscombe Medical Practice, and number 13, the Farncombe Local Streets Improvement Scheme. Would anybody like to say anything in relation to either of those? Oh, sorry, yes, Councillor Townsend.
Sorry, I would like to say that again, I'm really pleased to see some of the SIL funding go towards medical practices, medical centre. I think it's something, part of the SIL process is meant to be towards medical education. It's got a very broad area, and it's great to see, these applications coming forward to improve. What is, again, our residents again and again highlight the need for good GP practices. And, there are increasing numbers at Binscombe, and so they need to expand their practice there. And also, I am really pleased to see some money going towards Farncombe as well to improve the connections between Farncombe and the rest of Godalming. I think it's a really, really good project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend, and I echo those thoughts exactly. If no one else has comments or questions, may I move to a vote? And this is on item C, number 4, the Binscombe Medical Practice, and item 13, the Farncombe Local Streets Improvement Scheme. Those in favour? Carried, unanimous. Thank you very much. We can call back councillors. Someone could. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Tony. Moving then to recommendation D, which is matters in relation to Hazelmere, which is item 8, Hazelmere Parochial Church Council, so Linkway Hub project. Any speakers? Liz, did you want to add anything to this one?
No, just that it's going to provide an invaluable community hub for Hazelmere, providing lots of different services there, classes, events, all sorts of things. So I think it's going to be really well used by the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any speakers? Otherwise, I'll go to a vote. In which case, all those in favour of recommendation D in relation to Hazelmere Silbid reference 8. Thank you. And then finally, the others in other parts of Waverley, which relate then to Silbid references 14 and 16. Any comments, speakers on those two items? In which case, can I have all those in favour of recommending items 14 and 16? Thank you very much, everybody. Right, so that moves through the first part. So those SIL matters that can be determined under executive authority, which means we then move to the larger item, which is a recommendation to council regarding the Farnham infrastructure plan. Just to discuss a few of Jerry's questions, and I'm sure others will also pick up on elements of it. I don't think we can sit and guarantee that Surrey will do X, Y, and Z, but the way the funding is structured, I think, will enable the sort of monitoring that not only we, but the Farnham Infrastructure Plan Board envisages for the project, is my understanding. Any other members wanting to speak on this one? Liz? Yeah.
I'll just say, you know, this is it's a really important project for Farnham. Obviously, you know, it is a considerable amount of investment that's going into the town centre. I would say that the project is quite complex. I mean, obviously within a SIL bid, you are looking at the project, but you are taking an overall view on the infrastructure being delivered. And I'm sure as the project moves forward at each phase, and it will be obviously subject to technical drawings and technical assessment, that, you know, things like the air quality, monitoring of other things as well will take place. But I don't think at this stage of the project, when we're just looking at the more of the broad concept of the designs, that we can really answer the questions that Councillor Hyman was really posing. But obviously it is something that we can suggest, and this will be subject to them signing the funding agreement. So it is possible for, you know, us to stress the importance of the air quality. It's already in an air quality monitoring area. You know, Farnham has an air quality monitoring area, so it is already subject to quite stringent monitoring. Thank you.
Right, Steve.
Yeah, just very briefly in relation to Councillor Hyman's point about the air quality action plan, that will be monitored in accordance with statutory requirements. Once the measurements have been finalised and adjusted in accordance with the sort of technical way in which these things are done, and then submitted by the end of June of this year.
Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Leader. As Councillor Townsend has pointed out, this obviously is a very complex project. A lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of research has gone into it already, and I have no doubt that things will evolve over time. However, they will evolve in a way, I have absolutely no doubt, in line with the original intentions of the scheme, which, as Councillor Hyman reminded us, was to improve air quality, particularly in the town centre, and also to reduce congestion, particularly in the town centre. Having said that, we must recognise that it's not just about the town centre, and there are other wards. And I'm gladdened to note that Tim Oliver, the leader of Surrey County Council and the chair of the Farnham Board, has committed to look into mitigations for other wards, particularly those in North London. If he can do this in North London as well, so much the better. But I think he will probably stick to North Farnham for the time being. He will consider the effects, and I believe that all of the executive are probably more than aware of the concerns relating to the borough and the placement of the bus stop there. And also he will provide members of the Farnham Board with traffic modelling information, the very traffic modelling information that Councillor Hyman referred to. So yes, it's a complex project. Yes, it will evolve, but yes, it is something I believe that this executive should support.
Thank you, Tony. Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Leader. I want to echo all of that, and I think just for the record, remind ourselves that SIL is not our money, and we, don't have policy discretion to nitpick on a lot of the details here. So much as I much as I agree with everything that everybody's said, we to discharge our duties responsibly, we have to have regard to the letter and the spirit of the SIL regulations, whether we like it or not.
Councillor Murray.
Well, obviously, this is a very important scheme for Farnham, which has been long in the making. I'm sure it's been 20 years, I would imagine, at some stage, if people look back on it. It is a very contentious issue, but it's an opportunity. It's a fabulous opportunity, a once-in-a-generation opportunity for improvements to Farnham's infrastructure. So I thank the SILS Board's consideration and appreciate the responsibility which goes with it. There's it hopefully will start in sometime this year, September, at the end of the summer. We're hoping that the first initial start, we're hoping it will be phased over a period of time. And if there are improvements to it, and obviously people are happy with parts of it and maybe not as happy with other parts of it, but I would urge the people who are unhappy with it that these things will evolve over the years as during the construction phase. So, you know, we really appreciate that this is the initial seed starting of this project. It wouldn't have got across the board if the SIL board hadn't have contributed this element. So we really appreciate that, and let's hope for a successful project. Thank you very much.
I mean, it's often been said that Farnham is a town of 40,000 traffic engineers. And so the idea of ever managing to reach a conclusion that every single person, let alone every councillor or every level, Farnham Town Council, Waverley Borough Council, Surrey County Council and the MP was entirely all perfectly fine with, would have been completely impossible. We are in that situation where we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good when it comes to some of the small details. There will be elements of this clearly that will be subject to change over time. I mean, this is such a long project, such a complicated project, and there are several county councillors in the room. We know full well that these things can change with for only minor reasons, let alone the cost of the project going forward. So I would be very surprised if this is the last time we're talking about SIL for the Farnham infrastructure project anyway. Let alone the fact that this is obviously phased. So I'm personally, having been around doing this now since 2017 and 2019, when the initial deadlock was broken with the change of control at Farnham Town Council and here at Waverley, it is great to see this finally now being allocated funding to actually do something on the ground. So I wholeheartedly support it and thank those who have been involved in scoring it and making it actually happen. And I think it should be said, acknowledging that a consensus position on this was necessary, and I think showing that the commitment to this is appreciated by a lot of people. Any further speakers before I bring it to a vote? And I will read the recommendation for this one because it's a recommendation to council rather than a decision here. In which case, Executive is asked to recommend that Council approves the recommendation of the SIL Working Group to award £3,253,726 SIL funding to Surrey County Council for the Farnham Infrastructure Programme Town Centre Improvement Scheme to Council, which is SIL bid reference 3, split equally across the financial year 2023-24 and 2024-25, which is a split of £1,626,863. Can I have all those in favour, please show? Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you. Right. Moving then up to item 9, which is the Museum of Farnham Mend programme, which is with Councillor Mirrlees and I believe also with Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Leader. As people are aware, the Arts Council afforded Waverley £735,000 to deliver a programme of essential conservation repairs to the Grade 1 facade of Wilmer House, the home of the Museum of Farnham. We need now to go to tender for the main contractor through a competitive tender process, with Simpson Brickwork Conservation Limited being a named subcontractor. We will need to issue the invitation to tender prior to obtaining listed building consent due to a difficult timescale relating to the conservation works and the rules surrounding the Arts Council funding. The Strategic Director for Community Wellbeing, along with the Joint Head of Legal and Democratic Support Services, will award the contract to the successful bidder. This will be dependent upon listed building consent being granted prior to entering a contract with the recommended contractor.
Thank you, Kika. Mark?
Thank you, Leader. It's thrilling to see this advancing. It's wonderful that we've got the funding from MEND, and it's wonderful that we have the resources like these specialist craftspeople on our doorstep to actually do the work. It's really very nice. And I can't resist the temptation to compare this to the previous item, SIL. The reason we had to go to MEND funding was because Wilmer House was not eligible for SIL. It wasn't eligible for any kind of capital funding. because we're talking about the repair and the maintenance of a nationally important building. And it is, for me, a very good example of where the bindings on us financially are counterproductive. Thank you.
Councillor Townsend.
Can I just say, having, been here for a while as well and having this come up on the agenda time after time, and I just would like to thank everyone that's been involved in this project for managing to get this over the line, because it was not an easy task, and it was only due to the commitment of the executive, really, and Farnham councillors that, that we pulled this over the line, and that they managed to find a way through the MEND funding and, through the Arts Council. And it's just brilliant to see. This building is beautiful. It's a beautiful building. It would have been so awful if it had been, that's not me, by the way. Oh. It would have been awful if we hadn't been able to restore it. And I'm sure that the Farnham residents will be so pleased to see it finally emerge from its scaffolding.
Absolutely. This was in a bracket of things that the previous administration told me when we took over were impossible. So I'm very pleased to see this finally getting through to the actual doing of the thing. Any further speakers before I bring it to a recommendation? No, in which case the recommendations are outlined on page 32. One is to go to tender for the main contractor for the repair work contract through competitive tender process with the brickwork conservator, Simpson Brickwork Conservation Limited, being a named subcontractor. 2, to issue the invitation to tender prior to obtaining listed building consent. And 3, a delegation of authority to the Strategic Director for Community Wellbeing in consultation with the Joint Head of Legal and Democratic Services, Democratic Support Services, to award the contract to the successful bidder. This will be dependent upon listed building consent being granted prior to entering a contract with the recommended contractor. Can I have all those in favour, please show? Thank you very much. Again, unanimous. Right, item 10, off-street parking enforcement contract. I will now hand over to Councillor Tony Fairclough to introduce, and I have one speaker, Councillor Reid. Tony.
Thank you, Leader. If I may, I'll just put a bit of context behind this. Those of you who will remember at the budget meeting, it was agreed that we are going to be conducting an ongoing review of our overall car parking policy. And to that end, we are setting up an executive working group to do so and examine all the various technologies and opportunities that may well exist. To go back to this particular item, the contract with NSL is to provide off-street parking enforcement. That contract is due for renegotiation at the end of this month. What this paper proposes is for a 6-month extension to the current contract, which will give us additional time to consider not only the delivery of Waverley's off-street parking and cash collection, but also any opportunities there may be to work in collaboration with Guildford Borough Council as we develop our overall car parking strategy for the future. The cost implications of extending the contract as proposed here for 6 months are minimal. The benefits to Waverley are considerable. As we look to develop our longer term proposals, this gives us 6 months to effectively take stock of where we are and consider all the possibilities moving forward as part of our wider sustainable transport policy.
Thank you, Tony. Councillor Ken Reid.
Thank you, Leader. Leader, I've asked to speak on this item because I believe the report contains insufficient information on which an informed choice can be made. However, as is usual, it's likely that the executive have a fuller picture and are able to fill in the gaps to make that decision. If that's the case, please respond to my concerns. The executive are being asked to approve a 6-month extension to the current parking enforcement contract to allow time for the development of a business case for a long-term solution. It's not clear what is being referred to with the statement long-term solution. Is the long-term solution just focusing on a contract for parking compliance enforcement, or will that solution be a root and branch review of how Waverley's car parks operate? I think Councillor Fairclough has probably already answered that. And he has commented on the executive working group that is going to be set up to address that. However, in section 7.1 of the report says that a team of 7 full-time equivalents from a total of 8 compliance enforcement officers, weirdly enough called CEOs, and they work on an ad hoc rota around the borough. I must admit I was not aware of these figures, but have to say that I was very surprised by that number 7. There's no explanation of how the ad hoc rota is organised, but my observations are that a CEO is rarely seen in Cranley for more than 1 day a week. Working from the February budget papers, the total parking spaces in Cranley account for just over 15% of Waverley's total. I know that it probably isn't as simple as this, but if our contractor is charging for 7 full-time equivalents, I would expect to see that one CEO would be deployed in Cranley on 5 days of every week. If the executive approves the 6-month extension, I believe that the ad hoc rota should be replaced and fixed with deployments of 1 full-time equivalent in Cranley, 1 in Hazelmere, 2 in Godalming, and 3 in Farnham for 5 days a week each. Thank you, Leader.
Ken, what I'm going to propose is that we'll get the rota, the ad hoc rota as it currently exists, and we'll share that with members. I won't be able to just modify this contract off the top of my head like this, but what I will be able to do is bring the discussion about the new rota for the new permanent version of this that it goes after that 6 months. That will be discussed at the executive working group. So for right now, I'll make sure everybody's aware of what the current rota is, because I have to say I don't recall running across any of these guys in Godalming either. So it'll be a good idea. I think it'll be also nice to know what sort of what they look like in terms of, are they wearing a uniform or they've got something identifiable? I think they are, but I've not seen one in Godalming either. So we'll put out a note with what the rota is now so that people get an idea of what they're actually doing. And when we're looking at the new business case to review all of this post this for the situation post this 6 months, those things will be in the executive working group to discuss and set those new terms for the new version of this going forward. George.
Will that be a public document? Because you get that and you'd say, okay, Tuesdays they're in Cranley, Wednesdays they're in. Oh, is it? So it's going to be specific. It's just a general thing. They're not going to say which towns they are going to be patrolling on certain days.
Effectively, what I'll be asking, and it may or may not exist, and will need to be checked with the officer in question, which is Kelvin Mills. If there is record of where they have been in their ad hoc rota, I'm not sure it will say where they're going, and certainly I would not release that information into the public domain. Otherwise, I imagine they may get some interest, and among other things, for reasons of safety, that would be improper to do anyway. So, but I would like to give members an idea, if we have that level of information, where those officers have been over the course of, I don't know, the last quarter, just so that we can confirm that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for coming in. We'll find a safe way of giving some of that information, even if what it is, for example, a record of where PCNs have been given. That might help to give an idea without compromising anything.
Ken, did you want to come back in? Sorry.
Thank you for allowing me to do that, Leader. Yeah, I mean, the point I was trying to make is that I always believed that the ad hoc nature was, as George has suggested, so that we don't know when someone is in a particular area. But actually, with 7 full-time equivalents, we can have 1 in Cranley practically full-time. So I don't care if the public know that. There's someone there. And the same with Hazelmere, 3 in Farnham and 2 in Godalming. We don't have that issue. But I did think that that was the issue in the past. You didn't want to let the public know when there would be a parking enforcement officer in that area. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Chief Exec's solution in terms of PCNs giving us a rough impression of where they have been is probably a reasonable one. And we can certainly discuss how it's rotated otherwise for the new contract in the exec working group. Obviously, we won't be making the locations of officers such as this public. Otherwise, their lives, frankly, probably won't be worth living. Liz.
Yeah, and just moving on to a bit of a separate part of the paper. Obviously, I very much support the extension of the contract for a further 6 months, and it also shows the the opportunities that lie within our collaboration with Guildford to explore how we might be able to perhaps use Guildford to run off-street enforcement. So it provides a really good opportunity to look at that and to develop the case, as well as the cash collection assessment of that and the different payment methods we might be able to use. So I very much support this. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Any further comments? Right, in which case I'm going to bring it to the vote. Can I have all those in favour of the recommendations listed 1 through 3 on page 50? Thank you very much indeed. I will speak to Kelvin Mills tomorrow morning in regards to the additional information, and we'll get a note sent out to all members. We have a draft scope in terms of reference for the executive working group on parking, so that will be disseminated fairly soon. We've agreed most of the membership of that. Certainly Councillor Kenreid, you were one, and Councillor Beeman, we agreed this at last full council that those two would be members of that group. There will be at least, I think, one. There's another couple of vacancies though, so we'll be discussing that with.
There'll be a ward spread.
Yeah, we need a geographic spread. Yeah. Right, then moving then on to item 11, Brightwells Yard Development Project, which is with Councillor Fairclough, and I have one speaker following your introduction, Councillor Hyman.
Sorry, thank you, Leader. Sorry for the delay. Right. Excuse me, technology. No, it's not going to play ball. It's right, okay. With apologies. The paper before you for your consideration has come to the executive in order to update the development agreement for Brightwells Yard. The original development agreement signed in 2018 was considered by full council at that time. Since the agreement by council, the development started on site in 2018 and is now largely complete, with the cinema open and many, if not the majority, of residential properties occupied. There are a few elements on site which remain unfinished, such as the completion of Brightwells House and the extension and landscaping and the remaining residential units. For reasons that I think we're all aware of, the new bridge at Borelli Walk has taken longer than anticipated to finish, and not all planning elements are completely resolved as yet. Officers and councillors have been working hard to get the best result from that bridge in the light of the planning permissions that Crest already have. And I don't think we need to go back over those ever again. Therefore, extending the long stop date and removing the bridge from practical completion of works allows the site to open sooner than would otherwise allow, as is set out in the development agreement at the moment. This is an opportunity to also capture some minor amends in the form of the underlease for the car park and the approved drawings that are part of the development agreement that are currently planning drawings from 2018. The implications for the decisions being taken have no financial impact to the council. However, the options for not changing the long stop date have been considered fully by the council's legal advisors and set out in the exempt annex. This is recommended for decision to the executive rather than full council, as the financial implications, as I've said before, are zero, and the development is largely complete. The decisions are minimal to any other ward other than which it is cited, that being Castle Ward. The decisions will ensure that the development can continue on site and will bring forward a vibrant and exciting development sooner as possible, in the centre of Farnham, and I recommend them to the executive.
Thank you, Tony. And just to flag again, the two exempt annexes, I'm not proposing to move us into exempt session, but just please be aware that those annexes are there. Councillor Hyman, if you're still on the Zoom, you've registered to speak.
Thank you. I'm unmuted, am I?
Yes, Jerry.
Sorry. Okay. Yes, I haven't heard a response, unfortunately, to the email that I put out earlier. I know it was late. I haven't had much time to look at this over the past week. As I explained in my email, there are two concerns which I think residents should be looking at, and which we should be perhaps aware of, which are that firstly, that the decision is a key decision in terms of the definition in the Constitution, which should be placed before full council. This is a 27-year, £120 million project, which affects a number of wards, the whole of Farnham. It remains highly controversial. It's been unedifying, most unedifying, for over 20 years. It was strongly opposed by residents for good reason. And residents have been proven right all along. I don't have any problem with what we're being told here. It looks like a no-brainer, I think, as Councillor Fairclough has said. My problem here is with what we're not being told. The issue really is that the officer report provides scant information in respect to the potentially huge financial benefits or disbenefits of Waverley taking control of the development. I know a lot of residents would jump at the chance or the idea of the opportunity to take control and do things properly. We're getting near to the end of the project, but we don't know how many more years it can take. Crest Nicholson have performed badly throughout, and we don't know where it's going. And as far as I can tell from having a quick look at the procedure rules, the executive procedure rules, that's probably contrary to the procedure rules too, which require that I think it requires that we are told of any resource implications. So for all we know, there may be a huge financial benefit for Waverley Council taxpayers, who have until now effectively been subsidising or underwriting the risks of the project. The amount of money we've spent on moving the Brightwell Centre to the Brightwell Gostre Centre, for instance, public expense, more than the money that we're getting out of it. And we were meant to be getting £20 million from this project in the first place, and now it's become a public project with the risk falling on the public purse. So it is my duty to ask, because there could be a lot of money involved. I simply don't know, but we haven't been told what the financial issues are, and for all I know, there might be 20 million or 60 million in it for Waverley as compensation for how we've been treated by Crest Nicholson. And a lot of people would really want to expect us to ask what is the what would be in it for us if we were not to follow the recommendation here, or would it simply be that it would be terrible for everybody? I gather it wouldn't be good for Crest Nicholson. It might not be good for Surrey, but I'm thinking the balance of that would be that it could be absolutely excellent for Waverley. So we really ought to know that before this decision is taken, and I do believe this is a key decision which should go to council, and we should have that information. And a lot of people are going to be very unhappy if we don't act properly in this respect. So I think it's unfortunate that the questions I asked haven't been addressed in any way. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jerry. I'll pick up a few of these elements. If I just take the second point first regarding, you put the officer report provides scant information in respect to potentially huge financial benefits or disbenefits of Waverley Borough Council taking control of the development. Just to be clear, we are not taking control of the development at all. The principal purpose of this is to give assurance to, this is effectively at the request of Crest/Surrey, to ensure those who are thinking of or are already letting retail commercial space at Brightwells, that the project is stable and going to do what they think it does in terms of opening. The long stop date being a big problem in that, in terms of the numbers of delays with the project actually opening. So from that point of view, it's not Waverley taking control of the development. I'm not sure even the most extreme opinion in the room probably goes that far at this point, 20 odd years down the line. In terms of whether we could have extracted some kind of monetary compensation or value out of them for withholding this ability, I don't think it would be anything like what you're talking about, Jerry. I imagine you're trying to recoup some of the difference from the land sale when it was done to what was promised at the time, and if there were a way to do that, I can assure you I'd be right there at the front of the queue with you, Jerry. But this is not that sort of thing. This is a fairly minor contractual change in order to give some slight reassurance to potential and new commercial tenants. In terms of the key decision threshold, there's no value to the choice that we're making here. So it actually sits with exec. I mean, in fairness, we could decide to take it to council if we wanted to. In my opinion, and those of others in this room and officers, that would be a complete unnecessary thing to do. It's something that certainly can sit within the purview of the executive. There is no decision here in terms of any spend or value. Effectively, that value, as Tony mentioned in his introduction, is zero. Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Leader. Anybody who can recall back to 2019 when I gave my first impressions of the project that we'd inherited will know that I expressed then a certain amount of frustration, and I share a lot of the frustration, if not all of the frustration, that Councillor Hyman's expressed. We are now clearing up the bits of the can that have been kicked down the road for so many years that they have to be sorted out. But having said that, an unstable or a failing Brightwells development is no good for anybody, and particularly the residents of Waverley, and particularly the residents of Farnham. We are so close to getting it done that I think our duty here is to get it over the line with as much benefit as we possibly can. Thank you.
As we do have the author of the report, Debbie Smith, on the Zoom, and she's joined us for this evening. Debbie, is there anything you wanted to add in any of the questions that have been raised?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just would refer Councillor Hyman to the exempt Annex 1. We did, without going too much into that with as we were open, we did ask the question of our legal team, what are the implications? And obviously, it hasn't created a financial impact. And then I'd be happy to talk to you about that kind of annex offline if you'd like to, because we spent a long time getting that information and really kind of getting under the skin of the potential impact for Waverley as a development agreement partner. But otherwise, yes, that's it. Thank you for inviting me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And Tony, did you want to conclude?
Thank you, Leader. One last thing. I think I can speak on behalf of all 4 of the Farnham councillors here this evening, in that we are constantly asked, when is Brightwells going to open for business? We've seen the opening of the cinema, which has been very well received. This paper in front of you gives, as the Leader has already alluded to, this gives Surrey and Crest in their negotiations, ongoing negotiations with retailers and other potential commercial tenants for Brightwells, the reassurance to go out there and actually secure the deals, sign the deals, open the restaurants, the bars, the gyms, the children's play areas, the nail bar, and I think the estate agent, all of which are clamouring to open, by extending the head lease in this way, which is a straightforward contractual item. That gives Surrey and Crest the wherewithal to go out to these commercial, the people looking to make the commercial deals and say, yes, sign on the dotted line with a view to, for Farnham, open Brightwells, get Brightwells open for business. So this is very good news.
And just to conclude, one little tiny bit of governance as well. The other criteria for key decision is multiple ward. In this case, because the decision is valueless, it only impacts the ward which Brightwells is in, which I believe is Farnham Castle. So as it being a single ward impact, it again does not meet the criteria for being a key decision that needs to go to full council. George.
Thank you. I think this recommendation also talks about the bridge, the Borelli Bridge. It's that, obviously, as you can imagine, that's been a protracted issue. a bridge too far. We're going to get called all of it. But yeah, it has been a very protracted issue. This recommendation also moves that out of all the rest of the decision-making process of the development itself. And there's a bond put in place for which will allow enough money to build a bridge. And there's still discussions about how wide it's going to be, what it's looking like, who's going to have control in the future to maintain it. So, but that, at least that takes it off, and the rest of the development can carry on independent of this bridge and not get it embroiled in it. So I think from that perspective, I think that's quite a good idea, as long as the bridge gets built. I think that would be a fiasco. There's a river there, so you know, you're going to drop into the river. They've got to build a bridge or ferry people across it. I don't know, but at least the bridge will be done, and so it is a painful one, and that's why Farnham residents are sitting here. I think you know, over the years, the reason why we have a Farnham Residents Party, because of the East Street decision. So let's hope we can get it over the line and it is successful.
I'll certainly right now issue an open invitation to Councillor Natalie Bramwell of Surrey County Council to cycle across that bridge with me when it's done. Councillor Townsend.
That's a sight. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, and I wouldn't want it to anybody to imagine that the bridge was not going to be built from the conversation, you know, we just had. It is going to, you know, there will be a bridge across the water there, and I'm sure that you know, it will be much used by people, and connect up the Borelli Walk, which is a lovely walk there, into Brightwells. And it is really important that Brightwells is opened and becomes a vibrant place, because for too long it has been a bit of a carbuncle. Every time I drive past it, I think, you know, how quite sad it looks. So it needs to open, it needs people to be using it, and the cinema, as you said, has been a great success so far. So fingers crossed for all of the rest of the outlets that will come there, and I'm sure, you know, and finally, when everything is done and the place is occupied, you know, it should obviously be quite a considerable place for people to visit and to use. So hopefully that will be very soon, and I very much support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Any final comments? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, just refraining from any comments about bridges and troubled waters, yeah. Just really to echo the comments of Mark, that, you know, going back to 2019, given the challenges we face, given the treacle that has had to be waded through over the years, I think it is quite remarkable that we are at where we are at now, and I think that is down to the really hard work of Farnham councillors and also our officers in terms of actually facilitating that process. So, you know, I feel a certain sense of relief that we are where we are at now, and I just hope that the process is completed. And as we've said earlier on in this meeting, with regard to other matters, let not the perfect be the enemy of the good, and it's pleasing that we've got to where we've got to.
I add this bit not just to make everybody feel old, but also just for our new chief executive's benefit. My very first meeting in 2017 was the proposal to demolish the Redgrave Theatre, which was one of the components that obviously kicked this off. When the first element of Brightwells was considered, I was still at secondary school. And yet I was here voting on that in my first day in council in 2017. Kika.
God, that's like me saying, oh, when I was young. Just to say, it really has. Do you remember that woman in the election who went, oh, no, not another one? And it's every time. No, but I mean, every time we go, oh, is it going to open? Is it, oh, no, there's something else. Oh, my God, not again. But actually, we are practically there. And what is actually wonderful is that I went to the cinema the other day, and it was really quite nice at night. It was pretty, you know, when we've got everything going, the grass and the borders and the cafes, and I think we can make it something really worthwhile. And I just hope that, you know, that the people do recognise that it's a great place to go, and it'll be community orientated as well, with the ideas of things like the library moving in there and having a community hub there. So, yeah, we are just about there, and I just hope that, you know, we can get them to move their asses and get the thing built. Thanks.
This could, of course, be a convoluted plot by Councillor Ward just to make sure he opens it. I think it could well be that. I've got Councillor Rivers and then Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Leader. For the avoidance of doubt, I was a backbencher between 2003 to 7 with Councillor Reid. It was not intended to take this length of time.
Yes, I think it disappeared a bit after you all left, didn't it? Councillor Townsend.
I just needed to add, when you were all talking about, you know, all the different processes that this has been through, and all the trials and tribulations, I think perhaps we should also mention Councillor MacLeod as well, who obviously was a huge part of this and had the portfolio previously before Tony Fairclough, and I know he has lived and breathed and borne the battle scars as well of this project.
Yeah, very much so. Right, so I'll try and bring it to the vote. So we've got 5 recommendations. The first one is on page 57 and the other 4 are on page 58 of your agenda packs. Can I have all those in favour of the recommendations, please show? Thank you very much. As we have no further items of business and no need to go into exempt, I can close the meeting at 11 minutes past 7. Thank you.